Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining into the Remind Her Movement webcast. We love to introduce you to these new episode series that we're doing. We're going to be talking to individuals who know about counseling, who've lived through domestic violence, who've survived, who've raised kids on their own, and just a plethora of people we think you might learn a lot from. As always, our goal is to just have the candid conversations, be as real as possible, and find real solutions to where these survivor stories we hear, as wonderful as they are, they're not the end. They're just a beginning, and they're a catapult for us to stop domestic violence for good. Today, we have somebody very special to me, but Diane McNeil. Diane is one of our board members, and you don't see us a lot. We're always behind the scenes. Diane is one of those people constantly working, coming up with good ideas, and just killing it out there, trying to figure out what we can do to really shake things up and to start these conversations that we have to have. So it's my pleasure to introduce Diane today. Diane and I actually met at a public speaking training, and we worked together. One of the first things I ever heard her talk about was just being this single mom with an incredible amount of grit. And that's really what I think struck us with each other, was just Diane's already lived it, and she has amazing kids now, and she's been through it, and she really understands some of the struggles, some of the joys that we're all going through right now. Really, I just want to give you an opportunity now, Diane, to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Alyssa. I'm very excited to be here and share what I've been through, and hopefully it can give you some insight, or just maybe some courage, or maybe just give you some added grit that I did find along the way. And believe me, it didn't just start there. It took some doing to get it there. So yes, I was a single mom for about, I didn't count the years, but I'm going to say it was about 10 years. So my youngest, when I was a single mom, was 3, just turned 3, and my oldest was 7. And then I had a daughter in between. So I had 3 kids that I was raising by myself, and working only part-time. So I had one part-time job, was sort of trying to depend on the system, and I will get into that a little bit more later. So suffice it to say, I have journeyed through a lot. I depended on family and friends somewhat, but I had to really learn. I had to learn how to be strong, and I really did have to be brave, and I had to just say, you know what? If it is to be, then it's up to me. And that was kind of the motto that I followed, because I felt like, and not that I felt like, I knew that those 3 little kids were my responsibility, and I was going to do anything that I had to do to make sure that they were safe, that they were fed, and that they did well in life. And that's what I was luckily able to do. So that's just a little bit about me, and I'll kind of interject lots of things that I went through and about me as we go.
Awesome. I love that. If it is to be, it's up to me. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, that's it. That is it.
I love it. I think we need that on the Remind Her wall over here. So, I think one thing that especially I struggled with was that concept of, if I leave, I'm going to be that single mom. And there's a lot of stigma that still to this day, even now, feeling like I have it together. I feel like I'm out of some of that mess. Still, when you introduce people and people ask, well, where's the dad and where is this? It's, I'm a single mom, and people still go, oh. So why don't you tell me a little bit about that? Did you experience that at all, or were people super supportive, or was there the stigma when you were going through it?
I'm going to say there was definitely a stigma, and it's just, and it's funny to think of it now, but because my dad's still kind of that way. But my father, even though they supported me, but they're old school. My parents were married until my mother passed away, so over 60 years, and that's just the way it was back then. And still, for some people that are lucky and blessed, it is. But when I got divorced, one of the things that my father said to me was, it's going to be really hard to find a husband with 3 kids being a single woman. And I'm like, Dad, okay, I don't believe you. It's not true. But, there is somewhat of a stigma out there. I think, unfortunately, single parents or single parenthood is becoming more prevalent, which is not a positive, but it is becoming more prevalent. So the stigma may not be as strong now as it was. You're still going to feel it, I think. And it could be something that we may feel, or you may feel in the job force, because they'll say, oh, single mom, she may not be too dependable. This could be hard. I mean, with employers these days, there's so many different things they can look at, even though that they can't. but that they can. And that's where I think you or we as single parents have to be the strong ones and say, or come across with that confidence, being, you know, with the comment or confidence and mindset that, you know what, yes, I'm a single parent, but I got this, you know, I can handle this. It's just my job. You know, I'm still dependable. I am going to make sure that my job is done, and whatever it is that I have to do, I'm going to make sure that I do it. So you just kind of have to fight for those stigmas, because I think in anything in life, whether you're a single mom or whatever the case may be, skin color, ethnicity, you're still going to hit a stigma. So you just have to stand strong and proud in who you are and what you stand for. And I think that's how you can get through it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's something very interesting too, because you lived it. You were in corporate America for many years, and you're just now getting retirement.
Yes.
Everybody, if you were wondering, I'm definitely jealous of the retirement. I'm ready. But you know, you've had to live through that, and being a single mom can be difficult, especially because who else is there to help take care of those things, and just being able to watch you successfully do it.
They're leaving. Sorry.
Oh man. So, you know, how did you manage that schedule? Because we know that there's a lot that goes on, and still there's that mom guilt, and you know, everybody's mom guilt's a little bit different, but it seems like everyone you talk to, there's mommy guilt. It's, you know, it's all me. I can only do so much. And where do you focus those priorities? About that?
Well, yeah, that now for me, so back then I had a part-time job. I worked 4 or 5 hours a day. They were very gracious with me and would give me extra hours when I could, but it wasn't enough to take care of what I had to take care of, unfortunately. And many of you out there may know this, but the court system is not always in our favor. It is a very difficult thing to go through. And so I've had to fight through it. And then eventually I said, you know what, clearly you are not going to help me. So again, I had that, you know, if it's meant to be, it's up to me attitude. So I did work numerous part-time jobs in order to survive. I had up to 5 at one time, and they were piecemeal, you know, an hour here, cleaning a toy store, doing catering. It was very, very difficult. And finding care to help me watch my kids was not always easy. I was blessed to have a neighbor who watched children. So she would help me when she could. When my son got a little older, and I'm not gonna be confident enough to say he was probably old enough, he stayed with his sisters sometimes. So that's where a little bit of the guilt came in, because I used to hear horror stories. Oh, what Jason used to do to us when you weren't home, Mom. So I'm sure some of it could have been aggravated or exaggerated, but still, it was something that I did have to do at times. And it probably wasn't always the best decision, but it was something that I did, and it still worked out okay. But I did have some friends and family that would help. I did have a very great daycare at the time. I don't even know if those exist anymore, but I did have a daycare that worked with me. Actually, I know that there are some, because my daughter is taking her little boy to a place right now, and she does base her pay scale, or fees rather, on a woman's income. So she does have some single moms there. So that's a blessing. So I know that those can be found, but yes, it is very hard, and trying to find that balance, because as I was going through it, even having the multiple part-time jobs, when the court system decided, nah, he doesn't make that much money, he doesn't have to pay what he was paying anymore. I'm like, great, now what do I do? And believe me, or, you know, when I tell you that there were times that I would drive down the street with hardly any air in my tires, and literally pulling off the side of the road looking for quarters to put air in my tire. I had gotten that desperate at times, and there were some scary times. And those times are when you want to say, I can't do this, but you know, you can't ever do that. You can have I used to say, you got your 10-minute pity party. Turn on the radio and have that 10-minute pity party, but then you got to wrap it back up, and you've got to just keep on going. So, you know, there were those times, but I realized that if I was going to do anything, I had to better myself. So I worked on myself. I actually went back to school. Luckily, the corporate job that I had allowed me to go to school, and they helped pay for some of my schooling. And I got my degree, and that's when I got promoted, and that's when my life turned around. That's when I was added onto that job full time. I was promoted. I became a supervisor, and everything took off. And I got a little smarter. I got smarter with my money. I learned how to cut corners better. I learned where to put my money and how to make things happen. And I learned how to save for certain things. I mean, I remember scraping together and saving $350 so my daughter could go on a school trip. And that was probably the proudest moment in my life, because it was so hard to do just to save that money. But I was able to send her down to the Keys on that trip, and it was just incredibly rewarding. But I really had to roll up my sleeves and work. And yeah, I probably, missed a lot of my kids growing up, and I did. And that is probably the one regret that I have, but you can't change things. And, that was just what life was. And I will say that it did not harm them. They are very strong, and we'll get into them either later or maybe another call, but it didn't hurt them in one little bit.
Awesome. And I know that's something that everybody worries about, because, you're trying to balance it all, but you do miss things. And there's already a lot of, conversation around, well, should you be home? Should you be working? And, it's right. Everybody has a different preference, and everybody has a different situation. So it's really hard to say that one thing is absolutely right for everyone. But I love hearing.
Absolutely.
They did turn out fine. And I know from talking to you, more than fun. Amazing. They're amazing people because of what you've been able to provide to them, and those values that you've been able to portray because of it. And I think that's one thing that's important to do, especially when you're leaving a domestic violence situation. You're kind of saying, at the time, this isn't okay. This won't be normal. And these humans are my responsibility. I'm not letting them see this is what it's going to be later on. This is not how I want them to grow up, because I've told them that it's okay. And I think that's really great. Well, what surprised you the most about single motherhood and, just working through those processes?
Wow. Well, let's see. I think probably what surprised me the most was that I was stronger than I thought I was. Because when I was living in that situation, I thought, how am I going to do this? I have 3 little kids. I only work part-time. I depend on him for, the majority of the income. We have a house with a mortgage. And, I didn't really think that, and I never lived on my own either. So I went from living with my mom and dad to basically living with him and getting married. So I never really lived on my own. So that was another fear factor. So not only was I getting ready to walk away from this marriage, but I had to learn how to live by myself and with my kids. But knowing that if I stayed, it was not going to get any better, and things were just going to go spiral down worse than they were, I think that just gave me the strength and gave me the courage to say, you know what, you got to figure it out. You're not a kid anymore. I was 36 at the time when I did get divorced. And I just buckled up and said, I can do it. So I think it did surprise me that I was able to do it, and I was able to do it, I say now, so well. I don't think I felt like I was doing so well back then, because I can look back and say, oh, probably shouldn't have done that. And oh, yeah, I wouldn't do that again. But you can't change what you've done. You just, it's lessons in life, and you take those things and you say, okay, so if I get the opportunity, which is part of this, I'll let those know that maybe these are some of the things that I did that maybe you don't want to do, because there's certain things there that you just say, not a good example, because I think at the end of the day, the most important thing that you want to do for your kids is to set that example. They have got to see the role model of the adult that you want them to be, because that is going to mold them. As you know, they watch everything you do. So if you're not doing the right thing 80% of the time, none of us are perfect. Chances are they're going to make mistakes too. And my kids did make mistakes. They are kids, so they definitely did things they weren't supposed to do. But I'm very intuitive, so I caught them a lot. So that was pretty cool. I tell those stories now, and they're like, yeah, you didn't catch us and everything. But either way, I think I caught them on enough. So I just think, it did surprise me that I was strong. I was stronger than I thought. And I had to believe that. And that's where your self-belief and your self-worth comes in, because I think anybody can do anything that they choose to do if they put their heart and soul into it. Truly.
And, you mentioned the court system earlier too, and something we all go through, and some people it goes more positively than others. And we've talked a little bit about your situation with that, and we've had some similar situations in it. But what would you tell somebody about the court system and working through it, knowing it's a little different in every state, but is there any bigger piece of advice to help that single mom going through it?
Oh, I think that is a hard one. I think you just have to stay calm through it all. I remember, now my situation was probably different than a lot of people. Unfortunately, the husband that I had, his girlfriend at the time, worked for a lawyer. So I was getting served paper after paper after paper. And it was scary because my fear was they're going to find something I've done wrong and they're going to take my kids. That was my greatest fear. I could care about anything else. Take the house, take my money. I don't care. You cannot take my kids from me. And there were no grounds for it. I wasn't doing anything wrong. And I really didn't think that could happen, but you always have in the back of your mind, but what if, what could happen? So I had that fear. So I think you have to really stay as focused on your life and just being true to yourself and keeping calm. There's really no easy way around the court system. I'm going to add this to it. And this really isn't my background as far as what happened to me then, but moving forward, my daughter currently is in the same situation. She is a single mom. And she pondered the thought of, do I go for child support? Do I not? Do I go? Do I not? Because the father's not even involved. And I said, and I sat her down. I said, and I really just said, no, don't bother. Because, and that's not going to be everybody's situation, but for her, it was her situation because I know the anguish that was going to come along with it. And I know that for her, where she was, I said, you got this. I knew she could handle it, but I was there also to support her. I'm not saying that nobody should fight for it, but you have to make sure, I think, that you are not going to come out on the bad end because it can be very stressful and it can take a lot of time and it can take a lot of money. And if you have the strength and the ability to take care of things yourself, and if you really have somebody who's fighting you all the way, I mean, you have to really think about where's the value? What is worth more to me? Just being there for my kids and saying, you know what, guys, let's have a powwow. And obviously they don't need to hear the whole story. They just hear part of the story. And it's like, we got to band together. This is what we're going to do. Mom's doing this. Mom's doing that. This is my job. These are your responsibilities. We all are like team players. I talk about that a little bit more. But you kind of incorporate them into your life and say, this is what our life is. This is, how we do things, always in a positive way, and kind of making it exciting. This is our journey. This is our adventure. We all chip in and this is how we survive. So I think you have to weigh it out and make sure that it makes sense. That's really about all I can say. It has to make sense as best it can and just watch for the red flags. If things seem to be going in the wrong direction, find another way, get advice from somebody, as best you can. But it is a hard process. It can be an expensive process. I was very blessed in that because I lost so many times in the court system, and I lost a lot of times. One of the people that worked in one of the lawyers' offices, when I went in there to pay my bill, she says, "What bill?"
Wow. And
it was kind of left at that. So I was very lucky that I had a champion on my side that said, this poor girl, I feel sorry for her. You may not find it, but you know what? There's so many kind people out there. You never know what blessing is going to be bestowed upon you. So things happen, and it always seems to happen in the way it is meant to happen. So that's a hard question. It's a tough one to answer because there's no right or wrong way to address the court system. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's really important too, because it's really easy to say this is what's right. Should someone pay support? Should someone be in all of these things? But we know in the situations we're in, there's a lot of shoulds that will never be reality. And I will say too from experience, just the court system is exhausting and it'll mentally wear you down to some extent. And it goes back to that cost benefit analysis. And if it's going to cost me every little of my sanity to fight, is it worth it? In my situation, it was absolutely worth it. And because we're still going through some of it, just because there's certain things that have to be done with it. But it's a very strategic discussion, within the family of, should we be doing this? Is this going to get a good result for the child? And if not, maybe it's not worth it because it's exhausting to many degrees. Well, did you get any advice when you're a single mom? Was there anything that, even just parenting and motherhood period, was there something that stood out to you?
That I think the best advice I got was just from a girlfriend of mine. She was still married, but she was always there for me. So she would just be the kind of person that just she just kept me grounded. She would just always tell me, just focus on what you can control. You can only manage through so many things. And if there is something going on that you can't control, if he's doing something that you don't like, but you can't control it, you can't worry about it. So I think it was mostly just manage what you know that you can manage, and be aware of everything that's going on, and just make sure that everything that you're prioritizing or everything that you're focusing on has a positive impact on your kids. Even if it's harder for me, you do have to take care of yourself. I'm not saying not at all not to take care of yourself, but you do. You have to make sure that you're eating right. You have to make sure that you're sleeping. Just go to the basics as far as food goes. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but you and the kids have to eat good, and you have to eat consistently. So you make that a priority, and make rest a priority, and time with the kids a priority, and try to keep the stress levels as low as possible, because every ounce of stress that you feel is even stronger on them, because they feel it. And, because they not only do they see your stress, but they worry about your stress. So they're stressed because you're stressed, but they're also stressed because something wrong with mommy. Why is mommy crying? So, not that they can't see emotion, because they're going to need to see it. And maybe y'all have a good cry sometimes, but you have to almost be everything. And it's ridiculous to say sometimes, because you can't be everything, but it's just, I think, just trying to stay level, balanced. And, even at the end of the day, if you can say, all right, I'm good. And that was another thing that my girlfriend did. She says, let's go to the gym. So we would find our time, because most of the gyms, or whatever it was, maybe we're taking a walk, but it was always getting some sort of physical activity, because that calms you. That is one of the best stress relief things you have. And she would tell me, she goes, before you go to bed at night, do some stretching, do some yoga, turn the lights down, just sit and think, quietness. Just, reflect on the day and what can make things better tomorrow. So she was really good at keeping me grounded and trying to keep me calm. Yeah.
I think that's so important too. And, this community, we talk a lot about complex PTSD, and depending on different kinds of abuse, complex PTSD can be very real and very invasive in your life when you're moving from being a parent with maybe two people in the household, whether it was healthy or not, but moving into single parenthood and then having to deal with a PTSD on top of it can be so difficult. But the exercise, just these little things, go on a walk, get out of the house, get out of wherever you are, just looking around, right, having that space, that mental reprieve that you need to just keep going. One more day, one more hour, one more day. That day. If it's just making 5 more minutes through this day, you're going to make it. I love that. Right. I think it's really important to be able to connect and talk to someone about it. And, you didn't say this, but were you able to just have those really raw emotional conversations with this friend? Was that your person for that?
Yeah, that was my person. Absolutely. And she's still in my life. Yeah, she's still my dearest friend. I may not talk to her all the time, but she's still right there. Absolutely. Yeah. She ended up being a single mom too, but it wasn't from a bad situation. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, I know we're running out of time here. My screen's blinking that we're running out of time. So, one thing that I'm hoping we can start doing with all of these episodes is, our core is remind her. What are those key reminders that we need to have in the back of our heads? Because it does get tough and things aren't always the way that we want them to be. And we're fighting big battles, not only just within the home and within our lives, but just on this greater battlefield of how are we going to prevent this and how are we going to make this better instead of living through it again and again. So I wanted to throw it at you. What is one reminder you have for our audience?
I'm going to say lean on your support. So lean on us here. Lean on whatever resource you can to just be there for you and to be a sounding board. And because you're going to come up with things that are like, oh, I don't know how to handle this. What do I do? And if you try to figure it out yourself, you're only giving one perspective, because you can't be two people. You can't have two brains. And you can go back and forth, pros and cons, but you've got to have a sounding board. So lean on the people that you trust, the people that you like, people that kind of resonate with you, and seek help, because it doesn't help is everything. Just having a friend, somebody to listen to is so, so, so important, because you're not alone.
Yes.
Definitely not.
I love that. And like Diane said, we are always here. We're always behind the scenes. We're always behind the phones. Everywhere we go, we have you with us too. So as much as we hate that, we hear these stories again and again. we hear the stories again and again. There's other people who can talk to you about it, other people who've experienced it. If it's not Diane or myself or someone on the board, we do have other connections and other people to connect you with. And we do know, we've heard it a lot on some of our social media. If you haven't checked out our Instagram, please do. We're at Remind Her MVMT. But check it out. We hear a lot of people who just, you're a little embarrassed to talk to your family about it. I struggle with that a lot. Just being able to say, I'm leaving, or it was kind of for me, I left. We're doing this. This is what we're doing. But yeah, if your support system's not right there with you, if you don't know who that support system is, let someone else be. Let us try. Let us see who we can connect you with for sure. Well, thank you, Diane. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Absolutely.
I hope we're going to talk to you more too. We'll have some other episodes coming out, not just with Diane, but we do hope we can have you back.
Very good. I'd love to. All right.
Thank you, everyone. Stay tuned. We'll have another episode coming out soon. Bye.
Have a great day. Bye.